Good morning, everybody, and thank you for connecting. And this video is for Facebook and for YouTube. And also at the moment, we have some people participating live on Zoom. Everybody is welcome to join when they want. You can watch the class live on Zoom. And also I record the class to upload on Facebook and YouTube. Today, we will continue with some vocabulary, some expressions to try to help in relation to English. And you are probably familiar with the class. And the intention is to help people with English during the pandemic, and hopefully you enjoy the class. So on the left, you can see the schedule for last week, and probably next week will be very similar. In the morning at 9 o'clock, we have a speaking session in relation to conversation and to improve conversation and just to practice conversation. So this is available at 9 o'clock Irish time, which is the same time in London. Also at this time, 11:15, we continue with the free classes. That is the plan. And every day there are webinars as well. So today at 1 o'clock, we have another webinar dedicated to the level B2 exam, and people are welcome to join and participate if you want. There are different webinars every day. Hopefully there's no problem with connection. Hopefully we have no big disruption or distraction with people working at home, and probably it's the same for you. So fingers crossed, everything is okay. So to begin, this document for me is the very, very important document. It's the overview or the summary of English. And for me, it's necessary for everybody to be familiar with this document. It's necessary for everybody to know the terms and to understand the concepts, because for me, it's the foundation and the base of English. For me, there are three sections. The first section is use of English. The second section are the tenses we use in English, or the times, and the third section is just other grammar topics you can see here. Okay, so at the beginning, I just want to show you the important topics, because during the class, I mentioned frequently the vocabulary and I mentioned frequently these terms. So for this reason, it's important to be familiar with the concepts, okay? So use of English, we have different accents. People speak English in different parts of the world, and that's very difficult. The Irish accent, English accent, American accent, Australian accent, and even international accents. So it's very, very difficult to understand people when they speak. So this is maybe the most important part of English. Phrasal verbs are very important, a massive part of English. Idioms are also a massive part of English. And basically, the phrasal verb is the verb plus a preposition, and it changes the significance completely. So that's very, very important concept in English. Also, conversation and pronunciation is important. You need to maintain your conversation, and also pronunciation. I try to help during the class to identify the difficult words, okay? Tenses. So in English, it's important to be familiar with the different tenses. We speak in the present, we speak in the past, and we speak in the future. And for this reason, at the beginning, it's necessary you understand the different concepts. For example, the simple, the perfect, the continuous, the infinitive, the conditionals, the active, and the passive. So on this list, you can see the very, very important terms, and it's your responsibility to research more. And it's my advice that you learn a little bit more about the different tenses in English, because they're very important, and we use a lot of different tenses, and it's a big part of English, similar to other languages. I think all languages have different times and different tenses. And when you learn a language, that's one of the first things you need to do, is to be familiar with the times and the tenses, okay? Grammar, other grammar topics that are very, very important. For example, the noun, the article, the concept of countable and uncountable, the concept of the adjective. The function is to describe the noun. Also, the idea of the comparative and the superlative is very important for accuracy and precision. Also, adverbs, the function is to describe the verb. Modal verbs are a very big category. You can see the list here of the modal verbs. Prepositions are very important, and they're very small words in English. Prepositions related to direction, related to movement, and related to position. But also prepositions we use in phrasal verbs. It's like I'm in the disco dancing, but the phrasal verbs are very, very important for prepositions, and usually there's an association with emotions, and the preposition up is positive, down is negative. The next section is important. For example, technically, possessive adjective, possessive pronoun, or object pronoun. And basically the difference between my hat, your hat, his hat, or the hat is mine, the hat is yours, the hat is his, the hat is hers, or give the hat to me, give the hat to you, give the hat to him, give the hat to her. That's the area. And it's frequently confused. So people need to be very, very sure and very, very accurate in the use of that particular area. Also the difference between this, that, these, and those, the difference between another, other, the other, the others, how to create the question is important. The area of the suffix and the prefix is very important. And it's my really strong preference to focus a lot on suffixes and prefixes. I think it's a really good way to identify the structure and the form of the word. I think it's a good idea. Conjunctions and linkers are very important for fluency and to make English more cohesive. We have a lot of linkers that connect different sentences and phrases, and they're also very, very important. And it's important to know the difference between informal, general, and very formal linkers. Okay, that's a big part of English. And specific vocabulary, the best way to improve your specific vocabulary is to read. You need to read a lot and regularly, different books, magazines, different topics. Reading is a great way to improve your vocabulary and also a brilliant way to increase and to be conscious of the grammar structure. So reading is the best prescription, it's the best advice, and it's really an important thing to do. Writing is also very important. You need to practice your writing, and hopefully somebody can correct your writing, because that's a very, very important area of English as well. And exams are popular. The Cambridge exams, first certificate, advanced certificate, proficiency certificate are very, very popular. Also the IELTS exams are very important. So I have specific webinars dedicated to different exams. Today at 1 o'clock, there is a specific webinar related to B2, and you can join the webinar, no problem. And I can show you the link for the webinar if you want, okay? So this page is very important. It's probably the most important document when you learn English. Most schools have a similar structure. Most teachers have a similar structure. The language is the same for everybody. So that's very important to keep in mind for everybody. So for me, that's very nice and that's very important. Now, I want to begin probably with the article. And this article is from the National Geographic again. So its quality is very, very good. The standard, the level is probably advanced, but don't worry, because I tried to help just with vocabulary and expressions, and I tried to connect with the beginners, with the advanced. So it's just a typical article from the newspaper or magazine. And the topic is about travel, okay? And the topic is about maybe different places. And I think in particular, this topic is in relation to Italy. Okay, so the picture here is an Italian village, and the title is "The Locals Are Preserving the Flowers." Okay, so it's very related to nature, and the topic is about protecting the nature and protecting the flowers in Italy in relation to tourism. So for example, Venice, Barcelona, they receive a lot of tourists, and it's important to protect the city, protect the nature. And in this case, in Italy, it's a area or a place which is a spectacular place for nature in Italy. Okay, I don't know this place. I've never seen it. I've never heard about it, but it's very, very important in relation to vocabulary. So the topic is not so important. For me, the most important is the vocabulary. Okay, so the first is the verb to preserve. Okay, and to preserve is to keep. So it's very typical in lots of situations to preserve your record, to preserve your reputation, to preserve your routine. It's flexible, and I think it's similar in other languages as well. And basically it means to protect or to keep. But famed here is an adjective. Okay, so famous is another adjective. Famed is, so there's two adjectives. Famous is the most typical, but there's no real difference between the two. So here you can say famous, wildflower, bloom. Bloom is difficult. So bloom is a verb, and we have a couple of verbs that are very, very similar. We say the verb to blossom and the verb to bloom, okay? And blossom is more flexible, but it's related to the plant. In spring, the flower starts to bloom and the flower starts to blossom. But this is a metaphor for people. So for example, if you travel to a new country, you travel to a new environment, you start a new job, a new life, and you start to bloom like a flower. So you really are enjoying the situation. You're having a great time. You're developing, you're progressing. So you're really blossoming or you're really blooming. Typical for a teenager also, if the teenager is changing to an adult, they are really positive, they are really beautiful maybe, and they're very happy, and the verb there is to blossom as well. So the child is blossoming into an adult as well. So it is flexible and it is important as well. Over tourism, so this is very interesting as well. Tourism is the topic and over is the prefix we use for excessive. Okay, so it's possible to say to overeat, to overdrink, to oversleep. Okay, so these are very, very important words in relation to the prefix over, and we can say to overthink. Okay, so basically it's excessive. So if you eat excessively, it's overeat. If you drink excessive, you overdrink. If you sleep too much, you oversleep. Okay, and that's usually related to work. When you are late, we also say to sleep it out, and that means you forget to wake up, or you cannot wake up because of you're so tired, but you have to miss work. So we say you sleep it out, or you overslept in the past, irregular. So this is very important vocabulary. And then overthink is similar in relation to think, but it's excessive. So it's negative to overthink. So you are overthinking things. That's typical advice from your friend. You are thinking too much about something, okay? So very, very good vocabulary. And here, over tourism, it's not very typical, but it basically means excessive tourism. And this is the importance of the prefix, because the prefix usually gives you a big indication of the significance of the word, okay? The next structure, when we say one of, so for example, Ireland is one of the best countries. Today is one of the best days. So this structure, one of, it's very, very typical in the plural. The next word is the plural. And here, the plural is shows. So La Fiorita is one of Europe's best shows or performances. So you are one of the best students. So plural students. This is one of the best days. So that structure is necessary to have the plural at the end. And most people, well, a lot of people make that little error and they forget the plural, okay? Becoming is to transform. In Espanol, llevar a ser, to become tired, like get, okay? So the verb to become is like to get. And the significance is maybe to transform. So you get tired, you become tired, you transform tired. Too popular. So this is very important. We say popular is the adjective, very popular, okay? So popular, that's intensify. So that's positive. Popular, very popular, so popular, but too popular is negative. It's excessive. For example, happy, very happy, so happy, too happy. Too happy is excessive and it's usually negative and a problem. This is important. Very specific vocabulary. A petal is a part of the flower. So you have the flower and you have the center of the flower, but the petal is the outside of the flower that you take. Okay, so this is the petal. Also, in relation to affection, in relation to somebody that you love, it's very typical to say my dear, my darling, my petal. So it is possible to say my darling, my love, my dear, mi amor in Espanol or Portuguese, my love. And then it's also possible to say my pet or my petal. And that is possible. The significance is like my darling or somebody that you really love or care for. Okay, so petal is that significance of the flower. It's part of the flower. The next verb is very, very important, to pluck. And I think we explained this last week. So to pluck is typical with the eyebrow. So this is the eyebrow. Okay, and if you pluck your eyebrow, the significance is you pull the hair. So to pluck is this action, but it's also possible in nature. The river plucks the water. Okay, also in relation to an adjective for a person, if a person is very plucky, they're very determined. Okay, so a very plucky person, the significance is very, very determined person. And I think we saw this last week, and it was the same context, the same significance, that somebody is very, very determined. And here it's exactly the same, a very, very plucky person. But as I said, the most common use is in relation to the eyebrow, to pluck your eyebrow. Maybe with the birds, on O'Connell Street, on the main street, if the bird plucks the food, it's like to take as well. Okay, so to pluck something is similar to take also, because it's to grab, to rob. So maybe you can say to rob, to take, to pluck, or to grab. So very, very possible synonyms in that situation. Okay, so let's look at the first paragraph. Once a year, it's like one time every year. The single gravel. So gravel is a type of stone. Okay, so gravel is a very, very specific type of stone. It's the small stone. I think in my garden, we have the tree, we have the grass, we have the patio, and the gravel is the stone. Okay, so it's a specific type of stone. Also for the voice, if your voice is very gravelly, it's maybe possible that your voice is maybe very stony, like you have stones in your throat, so a very gravelly voice. So it's very, very specific vocabulary, very, very good quality vocabulary. Leads to, so the road leads to the village. So that's very important as well. So the road leads to the village, like the direction. But this expression to lead to is very important in relation to consequences. So for example, eating a lot of chocolate, overeating, eating too much chocolate. Okay, this activity leads to the bad problem or bad health. Okay, so eating a lot of chocolate leads to bad health. So it's very, very important expression. Eating maybe too much chocolate leads to bad health, for example. But a very happy person, because when you eat a lot of chocolate, you're very happy. So it could lead to, it's like the consequence. Okay, so it's very important. And the past is irregular, led to. It's irregular in the past. So it's very, very important word, and it's very, very typical. Okay, so here it's just literal with the road leads to. Tiny is very small. Tiny, very, very small. Becomes a front row seat, okay, to one of Europe's most stunning nature shows. So a front row seat is a very good expression. Remember, a row is typical, the opposite of a column. You have the columna and you have a row, okay? Remember the expression 3 in a row. So 2 in a row, 3 in a row, and the significance is consecutive. So if you eat chocolate for breakfast 3 days in a row, that means the significance, you eat chocolate 3 days consecutively. Okay, so in a row is a very, very good expression, very common and a little tricky when you learn English. Also, we have the verb to row, which is remar in Espanol, the sport, you row, and the song row, row, row your boat gently down the stream is a very typical song for children. So to row is this action, but it's more complicated because we have another verb, to row. And I think I have explained this before, but it's very important. The verb to row is to have an argument or to have a fight. Okay, have a fight, have an argument, and the pronunciation is different. So if you have an argument or have a row, the significance is you have a fight or a discussion. Okay, so really important. And this expression, a front row seat, is typical in the cinema. You have the front row, second row, third row, fourth row in the cinema, back row. So it's typical, maybe the couples or the romantic people are in the back row and the people with the bad vision are at the front row. So, but in relation to sport, in relation to boxing, the front row is the best seat. Normally, front row is the best seat. It's the most important seat. In the theater, you have the front row seat. In the sport, you have the front row seat. And the significance is it's the most important and you can see all the activity. So here, the significance is the village is a metaphor, it's the best location for you to see everything. So you have a front row seat when you visit this village. It's very creative, but very good quality English. Stunning is very important as well. So the verb is to stun, and it's like to surprise or to shock. So the adjective stunned is for the person, I am stunned, and the significance is I am shocked because the situation is incredible. I cannot believe it. I am stunned. Okay. Also, we say stunning. So remember previously, I explained the difference with the adjective ed and the difference with the adjective ing. So when it's your sensation and your feeling, it's ed, bored, I am, my sensation, I am bored. Excited, my sensation, I am excited, okay? Stunned, my sensation, I am shocked, I am surprised, I am stunned. But the movie is boring, the movie is interesting, ing. The picture is stunning, it's beautiful, okay? So here, the show or the performance is beautiful, it's amazing, it's stunning. It can be negative and it can be fantastic. So here, it's fantastic. Also for appearance, if the person looks stunning, they look fantastic. Maybe on the wedding, the boy and the girl or the people, whoever, look stunning, they look amazing, okay? And also for the police, we maybe say a stun gun. So this stun gun, like a pistol, is the pistol or the gun to shock the people, maybe with electricity, okay? So an electric gun to shock the people is a stun gun. Also, you can say to stun somebody to action, and to stun somebody to action maybe means to shock somebody into action, to make them take the action, okay? In the next paragraph, I don't think there's too much difficult vocabulary. Mid, May, it's in the middle. Early, no problem. Wild flowers. So wild is a good adjective. For example, a wild dog, a wild person is possible, like a crazy person. The weather is wild, it's dramatic. So it's here, it's the flowers, it's the wild flowers, like the natural flowers that grow in the wild. The plains is a bit difficult. So we normally say plain is very simple in relation to food. So if you want a pizza, and a plain pizza is a pizza with only tomato and cheese, no pepperoni, no mushrooms, no pineapple, nothing, just cheese and tomato. It's plain food, okay? So you can say the person is very plain, and maybe it means the personality is very simple. The personality is very maybe boring, so it's plain, okay? And also in relation to the land, the plane of land is the maybe center of the land with a lot of space, okay? And we have an expression that's famous: the rain in Spain stays mainly on the plain. And that means the rain in Spain normally is in one particular area, okay, maybe in the north of Spain, but it's an expression because it sounds good, okay? So we have another expression, we say a plain Jane, and that's just a joke because it rhymes. So an ordinary person, or a very boring person, or a very simple person, it's a very typical expression that you are a plain Jane. So for example, my clothes are very simple, no color, no design. So I'm a very plain Jane. So I'm a very simple person in relation to clothes or in relation to food. That's just the example, okay? It's different, obviously, from the word a plane, which is the airplane. So completely different, but the pronunciation is the same. And maybe for food, we say a plain pizza, as I said, or a plain burger. Only the meat, no cheese, no tomato, no lettuce, no cucumber, very plain, okay? Shade is like shadow. So I suppose there's a difference between the shade and shadow. So basically the shade is when the weather is very hot and the temperature is very, very hot. You need to sit in the shade, okay? And it's like the dark area. But the shadow, I suppose, is more from the person or the building. So for example, the sun is here and the sun shines on me and there's my shadow. Okay, so the shadow's for the person, but the shade is maybe a little natural shadow, I suppose. So there's a small difference maybe. Also, in relation to my shades, the significance is my sunglasses. So I need my shades because the sun is very, very strong. Also, it's flexible. We can say to shade the opponent. In sport, that means you defeat the opponent. You have the victory, but only a little. Okay, so if you shade the election in politics, if you shade the opponent, or you shade the victory, it means you just win by a little shadow, a small quantity, okay? Adjective, shady, is very, very famous, and you remember the musician Eminem, Slim Shady. So Slim Shady is the name of the artist Eminem, but that's just an example because it's not really, it doesn't explain anything really. So I'm just going to type this better. So the adjective shady is like very, very dark. So a shady person, a shady area. Obviously, it's not positive. It's not positive, so it's negative. A shady area is maybe dangerous, maybe illegal activity. And the same with a person. A shady person is a maybe person involved in illegal activity, not very clear, not very honest. So it's very, very famous and it's very negative. And it's possible a place or a person, okay? And as I said, it could be a little bit not good, okay? And that's very possible here. Then we have another expression. We say to live in the shade. It means that you're very quiet. You're very maybe antisocial. You like to live individually away from other people. So you live in the shade, but it's possible for the parent. So if your parent is very famous or your parent is maybe well known and you live in the shade or you live in the shadow. So they're very, very similar. And you just need to be a little bit careful of the use. So to live in the shadow is usually connected with the person, remember? So if you live in the shadow, it means that the other person is more dominant, the other person is more prominent, and you're very, very quiet, and nobody really cares about you. So you live in the shadow of another person. Okay. And as I said, to shade the opponent is common as well, to win by a little distance. And in the next vocabulary, there's nothing really typical here. Give life is a typical combination. So that's a typical possible combination, to give life to something. It's obviously literal. So when the couple have the baby, you give life, but it's a metaphor in relation to the city center. So for example, at the moment with the pandemic, the city center is empty, but you need the government or the politicians or the people want to give life to the city. So it means to put more energy in the city, to create more ideas, more projects. So to give life to something is a metaphor to basically the same as the baby and the children, okay? Typical, good expression. And the next paragraph, the first word for me is very, very difficult. There's two words, verdant, also dubbed, also the lung, okay? And we explained bloom already. Spot is very important. Look forward to is very, very important. Catastrophic, good vocabulary. Taken on is a phrasal verb. So there's maybe 4 or 5 very important lessons in this paragraph. The first one is verdant. It's not very typical. I think it's very advanced and very sophisticated. And basically, I think it's connected to green. So this color is green. And because of the landscape has a lot of trees, a lot of color, and the color is green, I think the word verdant is connected to this because in Spanish it's verde, and maybe in Portuguese it's the same. It's the color green. Dubbed is very important. Okay, so in the cinema, in the series is dubbed. Okay, so that's possible in relation to the voice. And for example, the original movie Titanic, the original movie is in English. You have the 2 actors. One is that you have 2 very famous actors and they speak in English, but maybe the movie in Spain and the movie in Italy is dubbed. So the significance is the actor continues to speak, but the voice on the movie is maybe Spanish, or the voice on the movie is maybe Italian, so it's dubbed. Okay, so in this context, it's similar to action and to the voice. So the region is dubbed Italy's green lung. So in this context, the significance is maybe called, like a nickname. Okay, so probably nickname, called, and there's another possibility, dubbed. Okay, so it's very, very interesting vocabulary. Lung is a part of the body. So part of the body is, you have the heart, okay, and then the lung is for the oxygen. And I suppose we can use a lot of expressions. To open your lungs is to breathe fresh air. Remember, the verb is to breathe and the noun is a breath. So this is very important. The verb is to breathe. It's the actual action, the verb to breathe, and a breath is the noun, okay? So the pronunciation is very different and very, very important. Similar to the verb to bathe, like sunbathe, or with the water, you bathe, okay? And the noun is a bath. So very, very important difference between the verb and the noun in relation to pronunciation, okay? Also, we have the adjective breathless. And after exercise, you are breathless. So you have no breath. Remember, the suffix is less, for example, homeless, jobless, it means without. And if you are breathless, you have no breath after exercise. Okay. Also, we say breathtaking, and that means amazing. Because something is incredible, your reaction is, so you lose your breath. And this action, this picture is breathtaking. It's incredible. It's beautiful. It's amazing. Okay. So that's very, very typical vocabulary as well. Something is breathtaking. The movie is breathtaking. The picture is breathtaking. So really good vocabulary. Here, pride is very important. In Spanish, it's orgullo and orgulloso. So in English, you need to be clear the difference. Pride is the noun and proud is the adjective. Okay, so pride is the noun and the adjective is proud. We have an expression maybe that we say proud as a peacock. So the bird we call a peacock, and we say proud as a peacock because obviously the peacock is the type of bird with the feathers, como plumas, the feathers, all the color, and they walk very with a lot of pride. So that's very famous as well. Also, we say proud as punch, and that means extremely proud as well. Punch, it could be the alcohol. So punch is this significance with the puño, with the fist to punch, but also punch is a type of alcohol and a type of cocktail or a type of drink to punch. Here, I'm not sure which is the connection, but proud as punch is a very famous significance, a famous expression with the significance very, very, very proud. Okay, we have another expression. We say pride comes before the fall. So if you are very, very proud, maybe a little arrogant, it's probable that you will feel different later because life is difficult and maybe pride becomes before the fall. That's a famous expression as well. Okay, pride comes before the fall. We also say to pride yourself on, and that means you are very proud about something. So you pride yourself on your punctuality. So you are very content, you are very satisfied with your ability to always be on time. So you pride yourself on your punctuality. Okay, Ireland prides itself on tourism, or it's welcoming. So it's flexible and we can use it in lots of situations. Look forward to is very important. When you're excited, when you're enthusiastic about the future, you look forward to the weekend. It's literal, for example, look forward, but the metaphor means that you're excited. You're looking to the future because you have a lot of enthusiasm about the party, about the weekend. So I am looking forward to the weekend. I am looking forward to the party. I have a lot of enthusiasm and motivation for the weekend. So it's really, really important. Spot is key. Okay, so the verb is to spot, but also the noun is a spot. And number one is typical for teenagers. So the adolescents with the skin, you have a spot on your face is like a little pimple. So a spot is very similar to a pimple. Okay, and it is very, very important. But also in this, if I drink soup, if I eat soup and I have a little spot of soup on my shirt, that means you have a little stain. Okay, mancha in Espanol, a little stain. So a spot is like a pimple, a spot is like a stain, but also in this context, we use it in relation to location. So the map of the city, this is Dublin, and you look at the map, and this place is a good place for a restaurant. So this is a good spot for food. This is a good spot for a cafe. This is a good spot for a cinema. So the significance is location. And that's really, really important, a location. So for example, question, do you know any spots to have a burger? Do you know any spots to have a coffee? That's the same. Do you know any locations to have coffee? Okay. But the verb is to spot. And the verb to spot is very important. So for example, you enter the party, you enter the room and you look for your friend, you try to identify your friend and eventually you spot your friend. So the significance is to locate or to find, okay? And I suppose we can say spot the difference, and that means identify the difference. So you have two pictures and it's a game, you need to spot the difference. You need to identify the difference. Also, we have an adjective, spotless. You remember the previous suffix less, jobless, homeless, and breathless. So a very important suffix. It means without. So spotless is the same, but it's in relation to the room. It's in relation to the house, in relation to the kitchen. For example, this is the computer, and my computer is spotless. And the significance is no stain for the soup. So it's not dirty. It's the opposite. It's absolutely clean. The kitchen is spotless. The bedroom is spotless. It's really, really clean. Okay. So very, very good vocabulary. Very clean is the significance. And excellent. So vocabulary here is catastrophic. The adjective is catastrophic, but the noun is catastrophe. So for pronunciation, it's difficult. Adjective is catastrophic, and the substantivo is catastrophe. Okay, so just good vocabulary. So catastrophic, and you can see it here. It's very difficult to spell. Catastrophic, and then catastrophe is the adjective, and I think the spelling is a bit different here. So let me get the spelling. Yeah, it's probably VY or FY, catastrophe. Okay, so really, really good vocabulary. Catastrophic is the adjective and catastrophe is the noun. So for example, the pandemic 2020, the year was a catastrophe. It was a disaster. It was chaos. Okay, so good vocabulary. And then to take it on, so La Fiorita, here's the sentence, after 2016's catastrophic earthquakes, which is terremoto, I think, terremoto in Espanol, earthquake, and 2020's pandemic, La Fiorita has taken on even more importance. So to take on is to assume. You take on a new responsibility, you take on a new job, you take on new workers in the company. So it's to assume. Okay, so it has become or assumed more important. And here you can see the beautiful picture. Wow, so it's incredible. Very, very beautiful, a lot of space, some hills. Okay, you can see the hills, the fields with different separations. The colors are quite nice. And then the flowers here, and also the weather looks amazing. So a beautiful, beautiful picture. And the poppy is a type of flower. Okay, so a poppy is specifically the red flower, I think, and it's very, very important vocabulary. Also, the crops is another important word in relation to agriculture. So the crops are the agriculture, for example, potatoes, vegetables, carrots, you're growing the crops. The crops is total, everything. And also the verb is to crop, which is to cut, because in the agriculture, you need to crop the land, and it's like to cut the land. But this is typical in Instagram. For the picture, you need to crop the picture, like to cut the picture. And also for the haircut, it's possible a crop haircut, and the significance is very, very tight. So cropped haircut. So it's also possible with a new crop in relation to people, a new crop of students, and the significance is a new group, okay? Because the crop is the agriculture. So a new crop of students is the new group of students. And the final example is to crop up, and that means something has appeared, okay? So you cannot go to the meeting because something has cropped up, and that means something has appeared. Okay, so that's very important as well, to crop up. Good, and I think that's good vocabulary just from one article, and always it's very important just to look at an article for vocabulary, for expressions, for grammar, and that's exactly the same. Today, we had 3 or 4 paragraphs in relation to vocabulary and grammar, and you can see the expressions here that are very, very important for the English in general, phrasal verbs, idioms, grammar. So it's a really good activity to analyze a text. Okay, so I'm just going to close this, and now I'm going to show you maybe some phrasal verbs. So yesterday, I think we finished with the verb to talk, and we had a lot of possibilities yesterday for the phrasal verbs with talk. Talk over means to discuss. Talk through means, again, to discuss. If you have a lot of problems and you want to talk through the problems, to solve the problem. Talk out is the same as well. If you want to talk something out with he disagrees, so there's my dog. But to talk something out is when you have a discussion or you have an argument. I don't know if you can hear me. I'll just wait 1 second. He's very suddenly he changes. I don't know what happens. So to talk something out is when you have the argument or you have the fight and you want to talk something out, and that means to have the solution, to the problem as well. So yesterday we saw a lot of phrasal verbs with the talk. Remember, talk down to somebody is the disrespectful situation. If you talk down to somebody, it's in a disrespectful manner. So it's very impolite and very rude. So yesterday we had a lot of possibilities of phrasal verbs with to talk. Okay. Today, I think we will continue with the verb to think. So again, we have a lot of possibilities with phrasal verbs with to think. And I'm just going to move the text here. And I see we have a few messages as well, probably in relation to the dog. Yeah, very cute indeed, the dog. Well, try living with him. No, I'm only joking. So the verb to think is obviously very clear. You think about something, but we have a lot of phrasal verbs in relation to think. And the first one, I think, is to think through. And that's the same as well. If you have a decision, if you have an important decision, you need to consider the benefits, you need to consider the disadvantages. So you need to think through everything. Okay, so the preposition is significant because it's movement, think through. The same, we can say to think over, and that's more reflection. Okay, so if you think something over, that's reflection because you think about everything and then you return about everything and you consider again and again. So to think something over is to review. Okay, but to think something through is maybe just from the start to the finish. So you can see the difference is very, very important for the preposition. To think out is not really typical, but I suppose we say to think out loud, and that's the only connection we say with out. So if you're thinking out loud, that's a metaphor that you're actually speaking what you are thinking. Okay, so that's a famous expression, to think out loud when you say something that probably you should not say. You're only thinking out loud. Okay. Other possibilities: think under, no. Think through, think over, think in. Yeah, maybe. A think in is maybe more modern. It's not very, very typical, but basically it means when you have a group of people in a meeting or family in a meeting and everybody is in one room, it's possible, it's very modern to say to have a think in, and that means that's like a meeting. So everybody gives the opinion because you're all in the one room. Okay. Maybe there's not too many. Think back. So yeah, to think back is possible in relation to time, to remember. Okay, so if I say to you, can you think back about the weekend? Can you think back to? And that means to remember. Think back to the weekend. Can you think back to 20 years ago? And the significance is to remember. Okay, so maybe not too difficult. Here we have the phrasal verb to think something over, and the significance is to consider. So the example is, think over the offer before you sign. Okay, so that means consider. And again, remember, over is like repetition. So you consider again, you consider again. That's the significance to think something over. Okay, which is very, very similar, as I said, to think something through. And that means from the start to the finish. Okay, the next possibility with think, again, consider carefully. So it's exactly the same, really. And you can see the example. You need to think this through. So maybe the situation or the offer carefully before you make a decision. Exactly the same, really, but I have explained a little detail. Yes, the next one is to think up. And this is important. So to think up is to create, because remember, we say to make up and to conjure up. So the significance of the preposition up is very, very important. It's positive, it's happy, and it's also creation. So if you make up, the significance is to create a new story, usually negative, usually a lie. So if you make up a story, the significance is to invent. Okay, to conjure up, that's the same, and it means to, it's more advanced, but it means to create as well. And it's possible in relation to food. So today you have the ingredients and the ingredients are limited. So you want to conjure up something. So you want to create something. And think up is basically the same. So you need to think up. So you need to create a new idea, a new plan. Can you think up a new recipe for tomorrow? Can you think up about something to do for tomorrow, a plan? So it's flexible in that situation. And here is the example: to create or invent a false story. So I'm going to think up an excuse. So it means just to create. I'm going to create an excuse from my thoughts, okay, for not going to her party. Throw away. Okay, so they are the most typical with to think up, think through, think down. No. So it's interesting. Not always it's possible to create a preposition with a verb, but in a lot of cases we have a lot of possibilities. Okay. Okay, so now I'm going to move to some phrasal verbs. So I'm going to close, sorry, some idioms. So I'll close this, and the next expression we have is after up. So yesterday we saw the expression up in smoke, and the significance is to destroy with fire. So the building, for example, in Paris, Notre Dame. So Notre Dame went up in smoke. So it means maybe it was destroyed with fire. Okay. And I suppose other possibilities with smoke, we don't have too many, but that's one expression, up in smoke. So the next expression is very famous, waiting in the wings. So remember, the wing is part of the bird. The bird has the wing, and I have a little wasp in the room, a little fly. So the wasp has wings, okay? The wasp has wings, or the bee has wings. It's all happening this morning. We have the people, we have the dog, we have the fly. You need to be on your toes in this class. So to be on your toes means you need to be active and you need to be ready to adapt. So the bee has the wings, the bird has the wings, okay? Bird has wings. So we have a lot of expressions in relation to this. Chicken wings are very famous in the restaurant, very, very popular. We have one expression, to wing it, and that's very, very typical in conversation, and it means to do something when you have no preparation, no plan, so you need to wing it. You need to be very spontaneous. So I think the significance is spontaneous, okay? So to wing it is maybe to do the action with no preparation, with no training. So you need to wing it. So the start of your new job, you have no training, so you just need to do the job, but you've no preparation, so you need to wing it. So it's like to invent. It's a difficult expression, but it is very, very common, and the significance is to do something without training or without preparation, to wing it. Maybe I'll give you one example, the wedding. It's very typical to give the speech at the wedding. Well, in Ireland, the man has the friend, and the best friend gives the speech during the wedding, during the dinner. So if, in this case, you do not prepare the speech, so you just have to wing it. So you say what you think at that moment. Okay, so no preparation, no paper, no plan. You have to wing it. That's very, very famous. On a wing, and a prayer is famous as well. And that means you have no tools, you have no facilities, you have no tools. So you need to do it on a wing and a prayer. So it's like you have very little opportunity, very little chance, very little hope, but you're going on a wing and a prayer. So for example, a ticket for the football match, you have no ticket, but you have to hope. So you go to the stadium hoping, with only on a wing to travel, and a prayer. Okay, so go on a wing and a prayer is when you have no hope or no opportunity to do something. Okay. Yeah, we have another expression, to take somebody under your wing, and that means to protect or to teach or to show. So if you take your friend under your wing, you protect the person, you teach the person. So that's famous as well, to take the person under your wing. Okay, so we have a lot of expressions in relation to wing, and the real expression here is important. So to wait in the wings is typical in the building. Okay, so to wait in the wings is very typical as well, and that means to in relation to the building. For example, in America, they have the White House, and the White House is where the president lives in America. So they have the West Wing and the East Wing. It's the part of the building. Okay, so this is important. So if you are waiting in the wings, you're not the most important person at the moment, but maybe soon you will be in the center. So if you're waiting in the wings, you're not in the center, so you're not important at the moment, but maybe very soon you will be the president. So if you're waiting in the wings, it might be your responsibility soon. So that's a famous expression as well. And I think they are the typical expressions with wing. The next expression is walk out. Okay, to walk out is basically to leave. It's literal. So I'm in the room at the moment, and because we have the wasp, because we have the animals, we have the birds, we have the other creatures, I want to walk out of the room and the dog. So if you walk out, it's to leave, okay? And it's a metaphor in relation to relationships or businesses or contracts. So if you have a contract and you change your opinion, you change your mind, you decide to walk out on the contract in a relationship, if one person decides to leave the relationship, this person walks out on the partner. So it's the verb to leave. Okay, so it's very important in relation to leave or to break a contract. Very, very important. Okay, so to walk out on somebody, it could be an argument, it could be a discussion. So in a meeting, you have the manager and you have the worker, and the worker is not happy. So the worker decides to walk out in protest. Okay, so really, really good. Walk through is possible as well. So to walk through is to explain the instructions. So for example, I want to show you a demonstration how to cook. Okay, so I have a video, a YouTube tutorial to show you how to cook. So first I want to walk you through the process. So I want to basically explain to you very slowly the process. So to walk somebody through is to show somebody the instructions, to show somebody the way to do it, okay? But very, very slowly. It is possible to talk you through, and that's exactly the same. If you have the instructions and you need to explain to somebody in detail the instructions, but very, very slowly, I'm going to talk you through the process. So there's a difference. To walk you through is maybe physical, to show you an example, but to talk you through is to explain the example, and through is important because it's from the start to the finish. Okay. To walk through, to walk over, yes, that's a very, very famous expression. So to walk over someone is very typical, and it's like to take advantage of somebody or to exploit somebody. So if you help the person and the person does not respect your help, is not very appreciative, so this person walks all over the other person. So it's like very disrespectful, very taking advantage, to exploit. Okay, very, very famous. And it's obviously negative, like a bully walks all over the person. So no respect, no care, no help. That's possible as well, to walk over somebody. In relation to sports, a walk over is very specific in sport when the opponent does not appear, the opponent does not arrive, so you receive a walkover, like a victory because the opponent did not appear. Okay, yeah, that's it. And finally, we say to walk down the aisle. Okay, so this is important vocabulary for the wedding. When the person gets married, the aisle is very, very specific vocabulary for the supermarket, for the airplane, and for the church. So in the church, the aisle is the passage. So you have people sitting on the side, and then you have the aisle. So to walk down the aisle is what we do when you get married. In the airport, in the airplane, the aisle is the place where the man or the woman walks with the food. And in the supermarket, you have different aisles as well. The pronunciation is difficult because the S is silent. So we just say the aisle. So it is very, very important word. And that's the only possibility, I think, to walk down the aisle. Okay. Wasting time is no problem. I think that's very clear. If you're wasting time, I suppose there's a difference between lose and waste. So to waste time and to lose time is a bit different. Okay, so this is important, to waste time and to lose time. So basically, the difference is important. So to waste time means that you have the time, but you do not use the time very well. So you're wasting your time. You're not using the time very well. But if you lose your time, maybe that's for transport. So you live in Brazil and you travel to Ireland and you leave Brazil at 6 o'clock, but you arrive in Ireland at maybe 7 o'clock. So you lose 2 hours, it disappears. So there is a big difference between to waste and to lose. Okay, and I think that's probably a good quantity of vocabulary for today. So that's interesting in relation to the article, in relation to phrasal verbs, and in relation to idioms. So really important vocabulary, really typical, really fluent, and hopefully on today, Saturday, you can enjoy your Saturday morning with the class. And thank you so much for connecting. And I hope that you can learn a little from the class every day. Remember, at 1 o'clock, my plan is to continue with the B2 exam webinars at 1 o'clock. And also next week, the schedule hopefully will be more or less the same as this week. So next week, the plan will be hopefully more or less the same. Social media, if you want to connect on social media, we have Instagram, we have Twitter and YouTube. And you're very welcome to join on all the social media as well, okay? So that's the content and that's the material. Remember, if you want to make a small donation or a small contribution, you are welcome. Here are the details. The first possibility is the application Bizum with the detail number at the top. The second possibility is the application Revolut. And the third possibility, which is probably the best, is the bank transfer, which is direct, and you just need the details. Here you can see. So thank you so much for attending. And I will put the notes for the class at the bottom of the video as well on Facebook. And as I said, the plan, this class is recorded on Zoom, and I will put the material on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope that you have a good day, and hopefully talk to you soon. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.